a painted porch in Athens, and a golden throne in Rome. One philosophy connected them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." How did a school of thought born in public view become the secret strength of an empire? This journey traces the key figures who transformed Stoicism and the core ideas they forged. You will discover a complete toolkit for building resilience and leading with purpose. We will uncover how a slave became a master teacher and why an emperor wrote private notes on being good. What does it truly mean to lead a life of virtue today? It all began not in a palace, but on a painted porch in Athens. This was the Stoa Poikile, a public colonnade open to the noise and bustle of the Agora marketplace. Here, amidst merchants and politicians, Zeno of Citium first gathered his students. He was a shipwrecked merchant who had lost everything, only to find his true calling in the philosophy of Athens. He studied with the Cynics, who rejected all societal conventions, but Zeno forged a more structured path. His system was built on three interconnected pillars: logic, physics, and ethics, designed not as abstract theory, but as a single, practical guide for living. For Zeno and his followers, the goal was a life lived in harmony with nature, which meant understanding the world through logic, accepting its reality through physics, and acting with virtue through ethics. They argued that virtue, the excellence of one's character, was the only true good. Everything else, health, wealth, even reputation, was merely preferred or dispreferred, but ultimately indifferent to a good life. Imagine the stark contrast. In a city known for its pursuit of glory and pleasure, these philosophers advocated for a simple life of reason and self-control. Their school had no private courtyard, no tuition fees. It was a philosophy for everyone, debated in the open air. So what would your painted porch be today? Where is the simple, unadorned place you go to learn fundamental truths about how to live? This radical idea that wisdom is found not in seclusion but in engagement with the world would soon travel far beyond the Athenian marketplace. If Zeno was the founder, Chrysippus was the architect who built the fortress of Stoic thought. Following Zeno's death, the school faced a critical threat, not from outside but from within, as rival philosophies challenged its core ideas. It was Chrysippus who stepped forward, a figure of immense intellectual energy who reportedly wrote over 700 works, though none survive intact today. His mission was to construct an unshakable logical foundation for Stoicism, one that could withstand any argument. He developed a sophisticated system of propositional logic, analyzing how statements connect and how truth flows from one proposition to another. This was not mere academic exercise. It was the steel frame upon which a resilient worldview could be built. He applied this rigorous logic to the Stoic conception of the universe, arguing for a world governed by a rational and unbreakable chain of cause and effect, a concept we call determinism or fate. For Chrysippus, this was not a cold, mechanical process. He famously used the analogy of a rolling cylinder. The initial push that sets the cylinder in motion is the external cause, an event that happens to you. But the way it rolls, its specific path and motion, is determined by its own shape and nature, your own character and judgments. You cannot control the push, but you are entirely responsible for your roll. He further argued that everything in the universe, even the soul and emotions, are corporeal, made of a subtle kind of matter. This was crucial, for only bodies can interact and cause effects in a world of cause and effect. His contributions to Stoic physics were profound, framing a universe where nothing happens without a reason, and our task is to understand and align with this cosmic reason. He wrote that a single day spent in accordance with nature is superior to an immortal life lived without it. Think for a moment about one of your own core beliefs, perhaps about justice or integrity. How would you defend it if someone challenged you logically? Chrysippus taught that a belief without a foundation is just an opinion, easily toppled by the first strong wind. He built the intellectual fortress that allowed Stoicism to endure, and in doing so, he handed us the tools to fortify our own lives. Stoicism was about to cross the Mediterranean and find a new home in the heart of the Roman Republic. The philosopher who built this bridge was a man named Panetius. He arrived in Rome from Athens and encountered a society obsessed with power, honor, and public duty. The abstract logic of Chrysippus and the cynic-inspired austerity of early Stoics did not easily resonate with the Roman aristocratic elite. They were men of action, not just contemplation. Panetius understood that for Stoicism to take root, it needed to speak their language. His genius lay in adaptation, not dilution. He softened the philosophy's more rigid edges, making it less about theoretical perfection and more about the practical application of virtue in public life. His entry into the highest levels of Roman society was through his close association with Scipio Aemilianus, the general who famously destroyed Carthage. Scipio was not just a military hero, he was the center of the Scipionic Circle, an intellectual gathering of Rome's most powerful and cultured men. Within this circle, Panetius reframed Stoicism. He shifted the focus from the ideal sage, a figure of impossible wisdom, to the concept of the proficiens, the person who is making progress. This was a profound and welcoming change. It meant that a Roman senator, despite his flaws and the compromises of political life, could still walk a path of virtue. Panetius wrote extensively on this idea in his work on duties, arguing that our primary duty is to live in accordance with our nature as rational beings, which for a public man meant serving his community with wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. His practical framing of philosophy was so influential that it directly shaped the writings of the great Roman orator Cicero, whose own book, also called On Duties, became a cornerstone of Western thought. Think of a modern idea like mindfulness or agile methodology being adapted from its original, almost monastic context to fit the dynamic, high-pressure environment of a corporate boardroom. The core principles remain, but the presentation and immediate applications are tailored to a new audience with different priorities. So how do you adapt your own core principles when you move between different contexts, from your family life to your professional world? Do you abandon them, or do you find new ways to express the same fundamental values? Panetius showed that a philosophy could travel and transform without losing its soul, setting the stage for its most unexpected student. For the Romans, philosophy was not just for contemplation, it was a guide to action, to officium. This single Latin word, meaning duty, became the practical engine of Stoic virtue in Roman life. Where the Greek Stoics spoke of virtue as an abstract ideal of living in agreement with nature, the Romans translated it into a concrete set of social and political obligations. A Roman senator did not have the luxury of pondering the cosmos in isolation. His virtue was measured by his service to the Republic, his family, and his clients. This emphasis on action made Stoicism instantly palatable and profoundly useful for the governing class. It provided a moral compass for the immense power they wielded. The great orator Cicero, deeply influenced by the Stoic Panetius, crystallized this fusion in his own work, On Duties. He argued that our highest duty springs from our rational nature, compelling us to honor justice above all, to protect community bonds, and to cultivate a courage that serves the common good, not personal glory. He wrote that we are not born for ourselves alone, a sentiment that would have resonated deeply in the Roman halls of power. Think of a modern corporate leader today. Their virtue is not measured by private meditation alone, but by their duty to their employees, their shareholders, and their community. Are their decisions just? Do they act with courage during a crisis? Do they exercise self-control with the company's resources? This is the Roman Stoic ideal in a contemporary suit. It asks us to look beyond our personal comfort and see our lives as part of a larger whole. So, what are your own core duties? Not the tasks on your to-do list, but the fundamental roles you hold as a parent, a colleague, a citizen, a friend. How do your daily actions in those roles align with the values you claim to hold? This Roman insistence on duty transformed Stoicism from a personal philosophy into a social one, preparing it for its most dramatic and personal test yet, in the hands of a man who had no power at all. One of the most influential Stoic teachers began his life as a slave. His name was Epictetus, and his body was owned by a Roman official. Yet, in a profound demonstration of his own philosophy, his mind remained entirely his own. After gaining his freedom, he did not seek wealth or status. Instead, he established a school in the provincial town of Nicopolis, where he taught a philosophy of radical inner freedom. His own history as property lent his words an authority no free-born philosopher could ever claim. He knew with brutal intimacy the difference between external circumstances and internal choice. His entire teaching system was built upon a single, foundational distinction, the dichotomy of control. Some things are within our power, he taught, while others are not. Within our power are our opinions, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions. Everything else, our body, our possessions, our reputation, our public office, is not. He wrote in the Enchiridion, "Do not seek to have events happen as you want, but want them to happen as they do happen, and your life will go well." This was not a call for passive resignation, but for active acceptance of reality as it is, so we can focus our energy exclusively where we have agency, on our own judgments and actions. Imagine you are in a modern workplace reporting to a difficult manager. You cannot control your boss's temperament or decisions. That lies outside your power. But you have complete control over your own preparation, your professionalism, your emotional reaction, and your judgment of the situation as either an unbearable injustice or a challenge to practice patience and clarity. Epictetus would argue that your suffering comes not from the boss's behavior itself, but from your judgment that it is bad and should not be happening. Shift the judgment and you reclaim your freedom. So think of one circumstance in your own life that feels entirely beyond your control: a health diagnosis, a traffic jam, a critical comment. Now ask yourself, while the fact of it may be outside your power, is your interpretation of that fact also beyond your reach? Epictetus shows us that the key to liberation often lies not in changing the world, but in mastering the one thing we truly own, our mind. Can a Stoic sage truly advise a tyrant without losing his own soul? This was the impossible dilemma faced by Seneca, a man whose life became a living contradiction. He was a prolific Stoic philosopher who penned profound essays on virtue, poverty, and the tranquil mind. He was also one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the Roman Empire, serving as the chief advisor to the Emperor Nero in his youth. For years, Seneca walked a razor's edge, attempting to instill Stoic principles in a ruler who would become infamous for his cruelty and decadence. His philosophical works, like his letters and the essay on the shortness of life, are masterpieces of practical wisdom. He wrote that life is long enough if you know how to use it, and that we are not given a short life, but we make it short by wasting our time. He argued that wealth is only justified if it is used for good, and that the wise man is content with little, yet he himself lived in a palace of marble and gold. This tension between his ideals and his reality is the core of his drama. He tried to guide Nero toward moderation and just rule, but he was ultimately complicit in a system that demanded compromise. When Nero ordered the murder of his own mother, Seneca's influence began to crumble. He eventually requested permission to retire, hoping to leave public life and his fortune behind, but the court would not let him go so easily. His final act was a forced suicide, a death he met with the Stoic calm he had always preached, becoming a living lesson in his own philosophy. Think of a modern corporate whistleblower or an executive trying to push for ethical reforms from within a corrupt organization. The pressure to conform, to stay for the sake of a sliver of influence, is immense. When have you faced a situation, perhaps at work or in a relationship, where you had to balance your core ideals with practical necessities? Did you stay inside to try and change things, or did you walk away to preserve your integrity? Seneca's life forces us to ask not just what we believe, but what we are willing to risk for those beliefs when power and survival are on the line. In the quiet of his military tent, the most powerful man in the world wrote notes to himself on how to remain good. This was Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, and his private writings, known to us as the Meditations, represent the ultimate fusion of Stoic philosophy and lived experience. He was not creating a formal book for publication, but engaging in a daily discipline of self-guidance, a relentless effort to apply Stoic principles against the immense pressures of ruling an empire, managing a plague, and waging war along its frontiers. His journal is filled with reminders of his own mortality, the pettiness of fame, and the importance of his duty to his fellow rational beings. He wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This was his method for transforming every hardship, every difficult person, every setback into raw material for the practice of virtue. A betrayal by an ally was not a disaster, but a chance to practice justice. A painful illness was not a curse, but an opportunity to practice courage and acceptance of nature's cycles. His central struggle was to maintain his inner citadel, a peace of mind that no external event could disturb. He constantly reminded himself that the universe is change, and our life is what our thoughts make it. "You have power over your mind," he wrote, "not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the Stoic ideal taken to its most personal and demanding level. Think of a modern leader facing a corporate crisis or a public scandal. The pressure to react with anger, blame, or panic is overwhelming. Marcus would argue that the true test of leadership happens long before the public statement, in the quiet moment where that leader confronts their own judgments and chooses to see the crisis not as a personal affront, but as the very stuff of their job, the fuel for their purpose. His practice mirrors modern therapeutic journaling or mindfulness, a deliberate effort to reframe reality and anchor oneself in core values. So, after your own difficult day, what would you write in your private meditations? What single sentence could you write down that would recenter you, that would transform the day's biggest obstacle into your way forward? Marcus Aurelius shows us that philosophy is not about having all the answers, but about asking ourselves the right questions again and again, no matter who we are. As the Roman world became more unstable, Stoicism turned its gaze inward. The grand stage of the Republic, where senators like Cotto had embodied public virtue, was gone, replaced by the absolute power of the emperor. In this new reality, the old Stoic ideal of fulfilling one's duty through political action became a dangerous, if not impossible, path. What good was a philosophy of public service when the public sphere was controlled by a single, often unpredictable, will? The focus had to shift. The battleground for virtue moved from the Senate floor to the landscape of the individual soul. This was the birth of the inner citadel, a fortress of the mind that no external power could breach. Marcus Aurelius, ruling from the very center of that imperial power, constantly fortified his own. He wrote in his Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." He was not building walls to hide from the world, but to stand firm within it. His citadel was built with the bricks of rational judgment and the mortar of acceptance. Epictetus, who knew true powerlessness as a slave, described this inner space with perfect clarity. Men are disturbed not by things, he taught, but by the views which they take of them. Your boss's anger, a traffic jam, a critical comment, these are just things. They are the weather outside your citadel. Your judgment about them, your decision to be disturbed or not, that is what you control behind your own walls. This shift was not a retreat from life, but a strategic reorientation. When you cannot change the system, your only true freedom is to master your internal response to it. Think of navigating a period of intense economic uncertainty in your own life. You may not be able to control market crashes or company layoffs. The old rules of career progression seem to have vanished. Where do you find your footing? The Stoic answer is that you stop looking for stability in the world and start building it within yourself. You focus on the qualities no downturn can take from you: your integrity, your capacity for hard work, your resilience in the face of bad news. So, what does your own inner citadel look like? What are the unshakable principles that form its foundations? Is it guarded by the discipline of your daily routine, or perhaps by the clarity of your morning reflections? When the noise of the world grows loud, what single truth can you retreat to that immediately restores your calm and reminds you of what you truly control? The Stoics believed a spark of the same divine fire burned in every human being. This was not a poetic metaphor, but a core tenet of their physics. They called this cosmic fire the Logos, a universal reason that permeates and governs the entire cosmos. It was the rational principle behind the unfolding of fate, the intelligent design in every leaf, star, and human soul. Because this same Logos is present in all of us, every person, regardless of their birthplace or social standing, shares in a fundamental kinship. This philosophical insight shattered the ancient world's rigid divisions. It gave birth to the revolutionary idea of cosmopolitanism, the belief that we are all citizens of a single world city, the cosmos itself. Long before passports or national borders, the Stoics were arguing that our primary allegiance is not to Rome or Athens, but to the universal community of rational beings. The Stoic philosopher Hierocles illustrated this with his famous circles of concern. Imagine, he said, that you stand at the center of a series of concentric circles. The innermost circle is your own mind and body. The next holds your immediate family, then your extended family, your neighbors, your fellow citizens, and finally, all of humanity. Our task, he taught, is to continually draw these outer circles inward, to treat the stranger as a neighbor and the foreigner as a fellow citizen. Marcus Aurelius, from his imperial throne, constantly reminded himself of this duty. He wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee. My nature is rational and social, and my city and country, as Antoninus, is Rome, but as a human being, it is the world." His identity as a Roman emperor was secondary to his identity as a citizen of the cosmos. This principle directly challenges every form of prejudice and exclusion. In our modern context, this ancient idea is the philosophical bedrock for concepts like universal human rights and global citizenship. It asks us to see the migrant, the person from a different political party, or the colleague from another culture, not as an other, but as someone who shares the same spark of reason and the same capacity for virtue. So, where in your own life can you practice this radical inclusion? Perhaps it is in listening genuinely to a viewpoint you deeply disagree with, recognizing the shared reason behind it. Maybe it is in making a conscious effort to support a business or a cause that benefits people you will never meet. What is one practical step you could take this week to draw one of your outer circles just a little bit closer to the center? The Stoics did not just advise accepting fate, they urged us to love it. This is the profound and challenging ideal of amor fati, a love of one's fate. It is the ultimate expression of their physics, the belief that a rational and benevolent logos governs the cosmos. To love your fate is not to slump into passive resignation, to simply endure the bad things that happen. It is an active, joyful embrace of every single event, because you trust it is a necessary thread in a beautiful, if incomprehensible, tapestry. This is the final mastery of the discipline of desire, where you stop wanting reality to be different and instead find a deep-seated gratitude for what is. Epictetus put it with his typical blunt force. "Do not seek for events to happen as you wish," he wrote, "but wish for events to happen as they do happen, and your life will go well." Marcus Aurelius, facing plague and war, sought to see the beauty in the fated. He wrote that everything which happens is as familiar and well-suited as the rose in spring or the fruit in summer. The cosmos is not chaotic, it is a single, living being, and you are a limb of that body. To curse an event is to curse the whole of which you are a part. Think of a plan you were deeply excited about that was suddenly cancelled. The passive approach is to sigh and think, "Well, I guess I have to deal with this." The amor fati approach is to actively ask, what new opportunity does this open up? What hidden benefit lies in this change of course? It is to treat the cancellation not as a disruption of your story, but as the next necessary chapter of your story. Now bring to mind one recent disappointment in your own life, perhaps a project that failed or a conversation that went badly. For a moment, set aside the frustration. What if you chose to see that event not as a mistake, but as an essential piece of your path? What strength did it force you to find? What better direction might it be secretly pointing you toward? Loving your fate is not about denying pain, but about transcending disappointment by trusting the grand design. Before you react, pause. That space is where your freedom lies. This is the heart of the Stoic discipline of assent, the first and most critical step in mastering your inner world. An impression hits your mind, a surge of anger at a colleague's email, a wave of anxiety before a presentation, a flash of jealousy at a friend's success. Your automatic instinct is to accept this impression as the absolute truth, to let it dictate your emotions and your actions immediately. The Stoics argued that this is where we surrender our power. Between that initial impression and your reaction, there exists a sliver of space, a moment of choice. Your task is to widen that space. In that pause, you withhold your assent. You do not immediately agree that the email is a personal attack or that the presentation will be a disaster. Instead, you examine the impression like a scientist studying a new specimen. You apply your reason to it. Is this impression accurate? Is it within my control? Is it truly good or bad, or have I simply judged it to be so? Epictetus put it with unforgettable clarity. He said, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. The critical email is just text on a screen. The traffic jam is just a line of cars. They are neutral events. Your disturbance comes from the view you instantly form, the judgment that this is terrible and should not be happening. Imagine you are stuck in a traffic jam, late for an important meeting. The initial impression screams, 'This is a catastrophe.' Your heart races, you grip the steering wheel, you curse the other drivers. But if you pause and exercise the discipline of assent, you challenge that impression. You ask, is this event truly catastrophic, or is it merely an inconvenience? Is my being late within my control right now? The answer is no. What is within my control is my response. I can use this time to listen to an audiobook, to organize my thoughts for the meeting, or simply to practice patience. The event remains the same, but your judgment of it has transformed, and with it, your entire emotional experience. Think back to a recent moment when a first impression led you astray. Perhaps a friend was quiet over dinner, and you instantly assumed they were angry with you, leading to a night of needless worry. What if, in that crucial pause, you had questioned that initial impression? What if you had considered other possibilities, that they were simply tired or preoccupied with their own thoughts? How would that single moment of examination have changed your entire evening? This is the root of emotional resilience. It is not about suppressing feelings, but about intervening before the feeling fully forms, by challenging the thought that births it. Your freedom does not lie in controlling the world, but in commanding your assent. What if the only thing that could ever truly harm you was your own poor character? This is the radical proposition at the very heart of Stoic ethics. While our world tirelessly chases after health, wealth, and admiration, the Stoics drew a line in the sand. They declared that these external things are not good or bad in themselves. They called them indifference, a thriving career or a sudden illness, public praise or slanderous gossip. None of these can touch the core of your moral purpose. They are merely preferred or dispreferred, but your virtue, your excellence of character, remains the only true good. The philosopher Musonius Rufus put it plainly when he said that virtue is not only more valuable than silver and gold, but more valuable than life itself, while life without virtue is no life at all. This reframing is a psychological superpower. It makes you invulnerable to the whims of fortune. Imagine two colleagues up for the same promotion. One gets the position, the other does not. According to common belief, the first has received a good and the second a bad, but the Stoic sees a different reality. The true good or bad lies entirely in how each person responds. Did the winner act with humility and a renewed sense of duty? Did the one passed over respond with bitterness or with grace, resolve, and a commitment to improve? The external outcome is indifferent. The internal choice is everything. Your character is the one possession that no market crash can devalue, no critic can tarnish, and no illness can weaken. It is the only thing that grows stronger the more you rely on it. So take a moment and make a quiet list in your mind. What do you truly consider good in your life? Is your list filled with conditions and circumstances, or is it anchored in the qualities you carry within you, no matter what happens outside? The Stoics practiced a form of mental time travel to the worst-case scenario to find peace in the present. This counterintuitive exercise is known as premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Far from being a pessimistic fixation on doom, it was a deliberate psychological drill designed to inoculate the mind against the sting of fortune. The logic is disarmingly simple. By vividly and regularly imagining the loss of the things we cherish, our health, our work, our loved ones, we accomplish two profound shifts. We strip future misfortunes of their power to shock us, and we simultaneously rekindle a fierce gratitude for the gifts we currently possess. It is the practice of losing something in your mind so you can truly appreciate having it in your life. Seneca was a master of this technique. In his letters, he advises his friend Lucilius to live as if his most precious possessions were already lost. Rehearse poverty, he suggests, so that wealth may never master you. Rehearse illness so that health may be a constant delight. He writes that he periodically spends a few days in a state of self-imposed poverty, using a rough bed and simple bread, not as a punishment but as a drill. He does this, he says, to remind himself that this is the condition to which fate may one day call me, and it is not so terrible after all. By anticipating misfortune, we disarm it. The goal is not to live in fear, but to move through the world with the unshakable confidence of someone who has already faced their deepest anxieties and found themselves still standing. Let's try a brief version of this right now. Close your eyes for just a moment and bring to mind a common modern fear, the sudden loss of your job. Do not just think about the idea, but vividly imagine the sequence. The unexpected meeting, the sterile words from a manager, the finality of it. Feel the initial jolt of panic, then follow the thread. What would you do next? You would update your resume, you would reach out to your network, you would cut non-essential expenses, you would discover a resilience you did not know you had. You would find that your identity is not your title, and your worth is not your salary. The fear of the event is almost always far worse than the reality of navigating it. This exercise reveals your own capacity to endure. Before this day ends, take just 60 seconds to try this practice with one thing you truly cherish. It could be your physical health, the safety of your family, or the comfort of your home. Mentally rehearse its loss, not to invite sorrow, but to banish taking it for granted. When you open your eyes to the present moment again, what do you feel? Is it not a deeper, more visceral appreciation for the very air in your lungs and the ground beneath your feet? When philosophy became a crime, Stoicism became a shield for political dissent. Under the paranoid gaze of emperors like Nero and Domitian, the Roman Senate grew quiet, but a small group of men, steeped in Stoic principle, refused to stay silent. They were known as the Stoic opposition, and their weapon was their unwavering moral integrity. Chrysippus, a senator who had studied with the Stoic teacher Musonius Rufus, began his defiance by simply walking out. He stopped attending Senate sessions where he was expected to rubber stamp the emperor's decrees, whether they were unjust convictions or theatrical extravagances. His absence was a louder protest than any speech. For years, this quiet resistance was tolerated, but to a tyrant, passive non-compliance is still a threat. Eventually, Nero ordered his death. Facing his sentence, Thracia did not plead. He turned to his son-in-law, Helvidius Priscus, and urged him not to harbor hatred for Rome or the emperor, but to maintain his own philosophical commitment. The historian Tacitus recorded his final moments, showing a man who chose his own manner of death, calmly discussing the immortality of the soul with a philosopher friend before opening his own veins. His death was not a defeat, but a final, powerful act of stating what he valued more than life itself. Helvidius Priscus inherited this mantle of defiance and took it further, openly challenging the authority of the next emperor, Vespasian, on the Senate floor. He argued that the emperor was merely a citizen entrusted with power, accountable to the law and the Senate. For this, he too was executed. This was philosophical martyrdom, the ultimate test of the Stoic belief that virtue is the only true good. Their deaths proved they believed it. Think of a modern whistleblower inside a powerful corporation or government agency. They see wrongdoing that is accepted as normal, even rewarded. To speak up means risking their career, their reputation, and their personal freedom. They must weigh their duty to the truth against their own security, just as Thracia and Helvidius did. Their stand is not for glory, but for a principle they refuse to betray. So what is that principle for you? It does not have to be a matter of state. It could be a point of integrity in your workplace, a truth you need to tell in your family, or a value you refuse to compromise in your community. What single conviction is so core to your character that you would be willing to stand alone for it, even if standing came with a cost? As Stoicism aged, it started to absorb ideas from its old rival, Platonism. This was not a surrender, but a strategic evolution. The rigid, corporeal universe of the early Stoics, where even God and the soul were a kind of subtle matter, began to admit more transcendent possibilities. A key figure in this shift was Posidonius, a philosopher and scientist whose curiosity spanned the entire known world. He traveled widely, studying the ocean tides and charting the stars, and his observations led him to a cosmology that felt more spiritual. While he remained a Stoic, he was deeply influenced by Plato's idea of a world soul, a divine and intelligent principle that was not merely physical fire but something closer to a cosmic mind. This introduced a new layer to the Stoic logos, making it less a physical law and more a transcendent intelligence guiding the cosmos. Posidonius also revolutionized Stoic psychology. The early Stoics, like Chrysippus, saw the human soul as a unified, rational entity, with emotions being just faulty judgments. Posidonius, drawing on Plato, argued that the soul had distinct irrational parts, like a spirited drive for honor and an appetitive desire for pleasure, which could rebel against reason. This was a more complex and perhaps more honest map of our inner world. It meant that self-mastery was not just about correcting bad logic, but also about taming these powerful, non-rational forces within us. Think of a modern tech company that built its success on a single, brilliant operating system. Over time, it realizes a competitor has developed a far superior user interface. Instead of ignoring it, the smart company integrates that elegant interface into its own robust, reliable system. The core product remains, but its accessibility and power are dramatically enhanced. This was the synthesis of Middle Stoicism. It kept the practical, resilient core of the philosophy while grafting on Platonic insights that made it more psychologically nuanced and spiritually resonant. So consider one of your own long-held beliefs, perhaps about leadership or relationships. Has there been a time when an outside perspective, maybe from a different school of thought or a person with a completely different background, forced you to refine that belief? Did incorporating that new view not weaken your original conviction, but actually make it stronger and more adaptable to the complexities of real life? While others debated logic, Musonius Rufus taught how to eat, how to dress, and how to be a better person right now. He was called the Roman Socrates, a teacher who pulled philosophy down from the abstract heavens and planted it firmly in the soil of everyday life. In an age of grand rhetoric, his lectures were startlingly direct. He argued that philosophy was not about constructing elegant arguments, but about the mundane business of living well. A true philosopher, he insisted, would be recognized not by his words but by his actions, his endurance of hardships, and the blamelessness of his daily conduct. He taught that we do not learn the virtues by hearing about them, but by doing them. A person becomes temperate by acting temperately, courageous by acting courageously. This was Stoicism as a hands-on workshop, not a theoretical seminar. His lessons tackled the most fundamental aspects of existence. He lectured on why simple food is superior to luxurious feasts, not just for the body, but for the character, as it trains us in self-control. He spoke on clothing, advocating for practicality and modesty over fashion, seeing the pursuit of fine garments as a chain on the soul. Perhaps most radically for his time, he applied this practical lens to the institution of marriage. He framed it as a lifelong partnership of mutual support, a philosophical fellowship where husband and wife must be true companions. From this, he drew a revolutionary conclusion. If marriage is such a partnership, then women must receive the same philosophical education as men. He argued that women possess the same rational faculties as men, and therefore have an equal capacity for virtue and self-discipline. This was an extraordinary stance in the ancient world, grounding gender equality not in sentiment, but in the core Stoic belief in universal reason. You can see the spirit of Musonius Rufus alive in modern minimalist movements. The choice to own fewer possessions, to consume simpler foods, to prioritize function over status in what we wear, these are all contemporary expressions of his ancient advice. They are not ends in themselves, but training grounds. Each small act of choosing a home-cooked meal over expensive takeout, or mending a piece of clothing instead of discarding it, is a repetition in the gym of the soul. It builds the muscle of judgment, reinforcing that our worth is independent of our external comforts. This practice makes us more resilient when true hardship arrives, because we have already proven to ourselves that we need very little to be content. So the challenge he leaves us with is this: what is one small, practical habit you could adopt this week to better align your actions with your values? It does not need to be grand. It could be as simple as turning off notifications for an hour to practice focus, or preparing your own lunch to practice temperance, or having a difficult conversation you have been avoiding to practice courage. The specific action matters less than the conscious choice to use your daily life as your classroom. Where will you apply your philosophy today? Stoicism reached its peak influence not through dense textbooks, but through personal letters and private journals. The early Stoics like Chrysippus produced vast, systematic treatises meant for fellow philosophers, logical fortresses built to withstand academic siege. The Roman Stoics, however, chose a different path, turning philosophy into a conversation. Seneca wrote his moral letters to his friend Lucilius. Marcus Aurelius composed his meditations for himself alone, and Epictetus' teachings were recorded as informal discourses by his student Arian. The form itself became the message. A letter is not a cold declaration of truth, it is a shared exploration. It anticipates questions, admits struggles, and builds understanding one exchange at a time. In one letter, Seneca does not simply state that time is our most precious resource. He begins by chastising Lucilius for wasting it, then recounts his own daily self-audit, asking what he has done to improve his soul. He writes, "I am not wasting any time. I am not concerned about the results of my efforts. My thoughts are not preoccupied by anything. This is not a lecture. It is a confession of ongoing effort, making the reader a companion on the journey." The repetitive nature of these works is not a flaw, it is the method. Core ideas about the dichotomy of control or the nature of virtue are revisited again and again, from different angles and in response to different life events, just as we need to hear fundamental truths repeatedly to truly absorb them. This is the same intimate dynamic that powers modern podcasts or insightful newsletters. You do not listen to a single episode and become an expert. You tune in regularly, building a relationship with the host's voice and perspective, allowing their ideas to slowly reshape your own thinking through consistent, gentle reinforcement. The medium itself, whether a scroll in ancient Rome or a smartphone today, fosters a sense of personal guidance rather than impersonal instruction. So, what is your preferred medium for internalizing wisdom? Is it the private clarity of journaling, where you can converse with yourself like Marcus Aurelius? Is it the back and forth of a deep conversation with a trusted friend, mirroring Seneca's letters? Or is it the consistent voice of a teacher you return to, who helps you practice these ideas until they become a natural part of your daily life? A common mistake is to view the Stoic sage as a person who never feels pain. In reality, this figure of perfect wisdom was never meant to be a historical person you could actually meet. The sage was a North Star, an unattainable ideal you sail towards, even knowing you will never actually reach that distant shore. This was a brilliant psychological design. By setting the standard at an impossible height, Stoicism freed its followers from the crushing pressure of perfectionism. The real goal was not to become the sage, but to become a proficiens, a person making progress. Your entire life, then, becomes a journey of continuous approximation, where every day offers a new opportunity to inch closer to that ideal. Seneca, one of the most revered Stoics, was refreshingly open about his own struggles. He wrote, "I am not yet a sage, and I will not be one. Let me make progress, therefore." This admission is not a failure, it is the entire point. The philosophy was built for imperfect humans living in a messy world, not for flawless statues in a museum. This ancient framework finds a powerful echo in the modern psychological concept of a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset believes that intelligence and character are static, leading to a constant need to prove yourself and a fear of failure. A growth mindset, much like the Stoic pursuit of progress, believes that your basic qualities can be cultivated through effort. A setback for someone with a fixed mindset is a verdict, proof of their inadequacy. For the progressing Stoic, that same setback is simply data, feedback on the path to virtue, a chance to practice resilience and learn. So, take a moment to define your own personal sage. What would that ideal version of you look like in one specific area of your life? Perhaps it is a person of unshakable patience with your family, or boundless courage in your career, or profound gratitude for the simple fact of being alive. You do not need to become that person today. The only question that matters is this: in which one area are you, right now, unmistakably making progress? Seneca called anger the most hideous and frenzied of all the emotions. He described it as a brief insanity, a temporary madness that overtakes rational minds and leads them to actions they would never commit in a state of calm. In his powerful work on anger, he dissects this passion with the precision of a surgeon, arguing that it is never a useful tool, never a justified response, and always a destructive error in judgment. Anger, for Seneca, is a voluntary sickness of the soul, one we choose to indulge. He writes that no plague has been more costly to the human race, a fire that consumes from within, leaving only ash and regret in its wake. His argument rests on a core Stoic principle. Anger is not caused by the event itself, but by our judgment that we have been wronged, that an injustice has occurred which we must violently correct. This initial judgment is the spark, and if we assent to it, the blaze quickly rages out of control. Therefore, the cure is not to manage the fire, but to extinguish the spark. His strategy is twofold: prevention and immediate first aid. For prevention, he advises a daily practice of cultivating a tranquil mind, one that expects the faults of others and the frustrations of the world as natural parts of life. Do not be surprised when people act selfishly or when traffic snarls, he might say, for this is the nature of the world. The first aid, the crucial intervention, is the deliberate pause. When you feel the heat of anger rising, do not act, do not speak, force a delay, count your breaths, walk away, or simply wait. In that space, you apply reason to the initial impression. Was that driver who cut you off truly intending a personal insult, or are they merely distracted, rushed, or unaware? Is the critical comment in an online forum a genuine threat to your worth, or is it the meaningless noise of a stranger having a bad day? By questioning the judgment that you have been wronged, you drain the emotion of its power. Think of the last time you felt a surge of real anger. Perhaps it was in a meeting or during a difficult conversation at home. If you trace that feeling back to its origin, what was the specific judgment at its core? Was it the belief that you were not being heard, that you were being treated unfairly, that your competence was being questioned. Seneca would ask you to examine that belief with cold logic. Is it entirely true? Is the situation truly within your control? And most importantly, will an angry response improve it, or will it only add more chaos to the world? The goal is not to become a passive observer of life, but an active, rational agent who understands that justice is never served by madness, and clarity is never found in a storm. Stoicism began as a philosophy debated among friends in the open air. It ended being practiced in the lonely splendor of the palace. On Zeno's painted porch, ideas were tested and refined through constant dialogue, where a student could be immediately corrected by a peer or teacher. This communal aspect was not a mere backdrop but a core component of the practice. Epictetus, teaching from his own school, was adamant about this. He insisted that a person seeking wisdom must surround themselves with others on the same path, stating that you must have someone to report to, someone who will ask you tough questions and hold you accountable for your judgments. The philosophy was a living conversation, a shared pursuit of a better life. Contrast this with the later image of Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher. His practice was almost entirely internal, a solitary dialogue with himself penned in the quiet of his tent. His meditations are not a letter to a friend or a lecture for students, but a private journal, a fortress of one. There was no one in his court who could truly question his reasoning or call him out for a lapse in virtue. His community was the memory of his teachers and the abstract ideal of the logos, a far cry from the direct personal feedback of the agora. This shift mirrors a modern choice we all face. Learning in a dynamic classroom with a professor who challenges you and peers who debate your ideas creates a certain kind of understanding. It is interactive, messy, and deeply relational. Self-study through an online course, while incredibly valuable, is a different experience. You gain the information, but you miss the immediate correction, the spontaneous debate, the shared struggle that forges deeper insight. Both paths have value, but they cultivate different strengths. So, who are your philosophical friends? These are not necessarily people who agree with you, but the rare individuals you trust to question your assumptions, to point out your blind spots, and to support your growth even when it is uncomfortable. They are the people who hold up a mirror not to flatter you, but to show you your true reflection. In a world that often encourages us to curate a perfect image, finding those few who help you cultivate genuine character is perhaps the most practical Stoic practice of all. Seneca was one of the richest men in Rome, yet he wrote that wealth is a slave, not a master. How did he reconcile this profound contradiction between his words and his life? The Stoic answer lies in a subtle but crucial distinction. Wealth, like health or a good reputation, is classified as a preferred indifferent. This means it has no intrinsic moral value. It cannot make you good or bad. It is simply a tool, and like any tool, it is natural to prefer having a useful one. The danger is not in possessing the tool, but in your attachment to it. Seneca argued that we should use wealth but never trust it. He saw the wise man as a good custodian of a vast fortune, someone who enjoys its benefits without ever being owned by them. The money is on loan from fortune, and a wise custodian is always prepared to give it back without complaint. He wrote that we should practice poverty to appreciate wealth and possess riches without being possessed by them. This is the tightrope he walked every day. He lived in a magnificent house, but in his mind he was its temporary tenant, not its permanent owner. He could write eloquently about the virtues of a simple meal even as he attended imperial banquets, because his sense of self was not tied to the silver plate. His philosophy was a mental firewall against the corrupting power of his environment. This ancient tension finds a clear echo in modern movements like ethical minimalism. The goal is not necessarily to own nothing, but to ensure that nothing owns you. It is the difference between the billionaire who is a slave to market fluctuations and public perception, and the person of modest means who feels a profound sense of freedom and sufficiency. The modern question of ethical wealth is not just about how much you have, but about your relationship to what you have. Are you the master of your possessions, or are you in constant service to them, working longer hours to maintain a lifestyle that ultimately drains your time and peace? So let's turn that question inward. Assess your own relationship with money. When you look at your bank statement or your list of monthly expenses, what does it reveal? Is your money primarily a tool you use to build a secure and meaningful life for yourself and others, a resource that amplifies your values, or has it quietly become your master, dictating your choices, fueling your anxieties, and measuring your worth? The answer is not found in the amount, but in the feeling of freedom you have when you think about it. Let us take a step back, 1,000 miles back, and see your life from the perspective of the stars. The Stoics developed a powerful mental exercise for this exact purpose, known as the view from above. It is a deliberate journey of the mind, rising above the immediate noise to see your existence within the vast, silent expanse of the cosmos. Picture your city from the edge of space, first as a sprawling network of light, then shrinking to a tiny speck on the globe, and finally, the Earth itself becomes a pale blue dot drifting in an infinite black ocean. From this vantage point, the presentation that has been consuming your thoughts for weeks, the argument that felt so significant, your entire personal history, all of it is contained on that single, fragile sphere. This practice is not about diminishing your life, but about revealing its true context. It is a direct application of Stoic physics, a way to viscerally feel your connection to the rational logos that governs the spinning planets and the flow of galactic dust. Marcus Aurelius constantly returned to this perspective to fortify his mind. He wrote, "Look at everything that exists, and observe that it is already in dissolution and in change, and as it were putrefaction or dispersion, or how that everything is ordered by nature to die." He would remind himself that the vast expanse of time behind him and ahead of him makes the briefest human life seem like a single blink. This is not a morbid thought, but a liberating one. It shrinks our anxieties down to their proper size. That urgent email from your colleague, when seen from 1,000 miles up, loses its frantic edge. The critical comment online becomes as insignificant as a single grain of sand on a continental coastline. The practice highlights our profound interconnectedness, showing that we are all passengers on the same small world, sharing the same spark of cosmic reason. Let us try this for just 30 seconds. Close your eyes and bring to mind a current worry. Now, imagine your consciousness floating upward through the ceiling above your neighborhood, seeing the cars as tiny moving dots. Rise higher until your country is a shape on a map, and then the whole earth is a beautiful marble hanging in the void. Look down at that tiny world, holding your life, your problem, and every person involved. From here, feel the immense scale of the universe and the quiet, orderly flow of nature. Notice the silence. Now, gently bring your awareness back into the room. How does that worry feel now? Its weight may not have vanished, but its power to dominate your entire mental landscape has likely been put in its proper cosmic place. Before Stoicism was a life hack, it was a rigorous system of logic designed to help us perceive reality clearly. This intellectual backbone is often forgotten, yet it was the very skeleton upon which the entire body of Stoic ethics was built. Chrysippus, the great architect of the school, famously described logic as the bones and sinews of philosophy, without which the flesh of ethics and the breath of physics would collapse into a formless heap. The Stoics were obsessed with creating a fail-safe method for distinguishing truth from falsehood, developing a sophisticated system of propositional logic that analyzed how statements connect and how we can reason correctly from premises to conclusions. They wrestled with mind-bending paradoxes like the liar paradox, which asks if a man who says "I am lying" is telling the truth. More crucially for daily life, they developed a theory of knowledge centered on the cognitive impression. This was not just any feeling or guess, but a perception so vivid and clear that it could only come from a real object, compelling your assent to its truth. It was the mark of a reality stamping itself directly onto your rational mind. In our modern world, this ancient discipline is the direct ancestor of critical thinking. Every time you pause before sharing a sensational headline to check its source, or when you question a gut feeling by looking for concrete data, you are performing a Stoic logical exercise. You are seeking that cognitive impression, refusing to assent to a fuzzy or misleading representation of the world. The Stoics understood that our emotions and actions are downstream from our judgments, and our judgments are only as sound as the logic that forms them. So, bring to mind one assumption you hold with certainty, perhaps about your career path, a relationship, or a political issue. Now, with the discipline of Chrysippus himself, ask the simple, piercing question: what is my actual evidence for this belief? Is it a clear cognitive impression of reality, or is it a story I have repeated to myself so often that it merely feels true? Your ability to live with virtue depends entirely on your ability to see the world as it is, not as you wish it to be. The Stoics did not see death as a tragedy to be feared, but as a deadline that gives life its urgency and meaning. This is the heart of memento mori, the disciplined remembrance of your own mortality. Far from a grim fixation, this practice was a philosophical tool to sharpen your priorities and infuse your days with purpose. By keeping the finite nature of life at the forefront of your mind, you are forced to strip away the trivialities, the petty grievances, and the endless procrastination that so easily consume our time. It asks a simple, brutal question: if this day were your last, would you be spending it this way? The answer instantly clarifies what is truly valuable. This awareness also fuels a profound gratitude for the ordinary moments we so often overlook: the warmth of the sun, the taste of a meal, the presence of a loved one, because each one is recognized not as a guarantee, but as a finite gift. Seneca captured this power perfectly when he wrote that he who has learned to die has unlearned to be a slave. He meant that when you fully accept your mortality, you are freed from the tyranny of fearing other people's opinions, the desperate chase for status, and the anxiety over losing your possessions. You realize there is nothing left to lose that was ever truly yours to keep, and in that realization, you find the courage to live as your truest self. This ancient practice finds a direct parallel in modern productivity. Think of a major project at work. Without a deadline, it can drift for months, bogged down by perfectionism and distractions. The moment a final date is set, your focus sharpens, unnecessary tasks fall away, and you become ruthlessly efficient with your energy. Memento mori is the ultimate deadline, applied not to a single project but to your entire life. It forces you to concentrate on your legacy, your relationships, and your character. So let that question land with its full weight. If you knew with certainty that you had just 1 year left to live, what single thing would you start doing today that you have been putting off? And more importantly, what would you immediately stop doing because it no longer serves the person you truly want to become? The Stoic ideal was not to become an unfeeling stone, but to master the space between a lightning strike of feeling and the storm of a full-blown passion. This crucial distinction is captured in two powerful Greek ideas, apatheia and propatheia. Apatheia, often misunderstood as apathy, is the state of freedom from the destructive, overwhelming passions that hijack our reason. Propatheia are the first movements, the initial, involuntary jolts of emotion that happen to everyone. Imagine the sudden lurch in your stomach when a car swerves near you, or the instant flash of heat when you hear a cutting remark. These are your propatheia, your pre-passions. They are biological, automatic, and completely outside your direct control. The Stoics saw them as neither good nor bad, merely facts of our human machinery. The passion, the true disturbance, only ignites when you give your assent. This is the moment you add a story to the sensation. That lurch in your stomach becomes a narrative of terror about what could have happened, and you spend the next hour shaking with anger. That flash of heat becomes a judgment that you have been deeply disrespected, and you fire back with a cruel retort. Seneca beautifully illustrated this with the image of a wise man who feels his wounds but does not add to them with complaint. Even the sage will flinch at a sudden noise or pale at a dire diagnosis, for these are propatheia, but he will not then assent to the judgment that the world is ending or that his life is ruined. He feels the initial sting without pouring the fuel of his fearful opinions onto the fire. This week, become an archaeologist of your own emotions. When you feel that initial jolt, whether it is a spike of anxiety before a meeting or a pang of envy at a friend's success, pause. Observe the raw physical sensation before the story rushes in. Is it a tightness in your chest, a quickening of your pulse? For just a moment, can you let it be just that, a simple, fleeting event in your body, without the commentary that transforms it into a day-long drama? This is the practice of separating the first flicker from the flame. With the death of Marcus Aurelius, the golden age of Roman Stoicism passed, but its soul was far from dead. The philosophy that had guided senators and emperors began to recede from the public stage, not from a failure of its ideas, but from a seismic shift in the spiritual landscape of the empire. Two powerful new forces were rising, Neoplatonism and Christianity. Neoplatonism offered a more mystical and transcendent vision of the divine, drawing the educated elite upward toward an ineffable one, while Christianity spread a message of salvation and a loving God that resonated with the masses. The old philosophical schools, including the Stoic one, were seen as rivals to this new orthodoxy. In the year 529, the Christian Emperor Justinian made a decisive move, ordering the closure of the pagan philosophical schools in Athens. The formal, organized teaching of Stoicism was effectively silenced, yet its most powerful insights were far too valuable to disappear. Christian thinkers, tasked with building a comprehensive worldview, began to mine Stoic texts for their ethical gold. They admired the Stoic emphasis on self-control, duty, and resilience, seeing in them a parallel to Christian virtues. The great church father Augustine, before his full conversion, had deeply studied Stoic works and absorbed their logic and psychology. He rejected the Stoic corporeal God and their belief in achieving perfect virtue in this life, but he seamlessly wove their ideas about the inner life, the discipline of the will, and the ordered nature of a universe governed by divine reason into the fabric of Christian theology. It is as if a beloved, independent company with a brilliant product line was acquired by a massive global conglomerate. The original brand name faded from the storefronts, but its most innovative and reliable components were integrated into new, best-selling products, reaching audiences its founders could never have envisioned. The core of Stoic practice, the tools for building an unshakable character, lived on, now bearing a different label. This transmission across centuries and cultures reveals a profound truth about enduring wisdom. It is not the external institution that matters most, but the internal, practical value of the ideas themselves. If the context for your own most cherished practices were to vanish tomorrow, if your job title changed or your community dispersed, what is the essential kernel you would work to preserve? What principle is so fundamental to who you are that it would find a new home, no matter the circumstances? The journey from Zeno's Porch did not end in Rome. Its final stop might be your smartphone, your boardroom, or your therapist's office. For centuries, the core ideas of Stoicism lay dormant within other traditions, waiting for a modern context to bring them back into the light. That context arrived with the birth of cognitive behavioral therapy. A young psychologist named Albert Ellis, frustrated with the slow progress of Freudian psychoanalysis, found a more direct path in the works of Epictetus. He was struck by the simple, powerful idea that people are disturbed not by events, but by their views of them. This became the foundational principle of CBT, that by changing our irrational beliefs and judgments, we can change our destructive emotions and behaviors. The ancient discipline of assent, of questioning our initial impressions, is now a standard therapeutic technique used by millions. A modern interpreter like Ryan Holiday has acted as a translator for this ancient wisdom, repackaging the meditations of Marcus Aurelius and the discourses of Epictetus into best-selling books that frame Stoicism as an operating system for modern life. The philosophy once debated by senators is now practiced by elite athletes and special forces soldiers. They use Stoic principles to endure extreme pressure, to focus on their immediate duty, and to accept pain and uncertainty as part of the mission. This is not theoretical. It is the practical application of loving one's fate on the battlefield or the playing field. The global phenomenon of Stoic Week, where thousands of people live like a Stoic for 7 days, or the daily email meditations that arrive in your inbox each morning, are the modern equivalents of the philosophical schools. They are structured practices designed to build resilience and reorient your character, just as Musonius Rufus taught his students through daily habits. The medium has changed from a painted porch to a digital screen, but the human need for guidance remains the same. So consider your own life for a moment. Have you ever taken a deep breath before responding to a frustrating email, pausing to question your initial anger? That is the discipline of assent. Have you ever reframed a cancelled plan as an unexpected opportunity for rest or reflection? That is the seed of amor fati. You may have been practicing a form of Stoicism all along without ever knowing its ancient name. The philosophy did not die. It simply learned a new language, waiting for a world in need of its timeless, unshakable strength. The story of Stoicism is a journey from public debate to private resilience, from the bustling Athenian porch to the quiet of the imperial mind. It began as a comprehensive system for living in agreement with nature, and through the crucible of Roman life, it was forged into a personal toolkit for unwavering strength. This evolution distilled a vast philosophy into a few profound truths you can carry with you. Focus only on what is within your power, your judgments and actions. Practice virtue not as a distant ideal, but as your daily duty in every role you hold, and constantly correct your perspective, seeing your life from the lofty view of the cosmos and the immediate truth of the present moment. These are the tools that built an inner citadel no external force could ever breach. Marcus Aurelius left us with a final, guiding light when he wrote, "The universe is change, our life is what our thoughts make it." This single sentence captures the entire Stoic endeavor. The outer world will always shift, empires will rise and fall, fortunes will turn. Your power lies in the one thing that remains yours, your mind and its interpretations. The long evolution of Stoic thought, through its architects and its martyrs, its teachers and its emperors, has now reached its most important destination. It has reached you. The next application of these principles will not be written in a book or debated in a senate. It will be lived in your choices, in your challenges, and in your quiet moments of reflection. We would love to hear which part of this journey resonated with you most. Was it the unshakable logic of Chrysippus, the radical freedom of Epictetus, or the dutiful journal of Marcus Aurelius? Share your thoughts in the comments, and let's continue this conversation together.